It's my honor to introduce California Assemblyman Chris Holden, who could not be with us in person, but who graciously agreed to say a few words by video for us. Assemblyman Holden has been in public service for much of his adult life, and the former chair of the Assembly Committee on Utilities and Energy has been one of our state's leading voices on the energy issues and the value of Western states' collaboration to enhance reliability. Chris is now the chair of the Assembly Committee on Appropriations, but he continues to be passionate about and advocate for the greater energy collaboration needs across the Western states. And he understands the benefits that can be created. So, as many of you know, Assemblyman Holden won unanimous bipartisan approval in both the Assembly and the Senate last session with his Assembly Concurrent Resolution 188. It asks the ISO to summarize the benefits of regional electric grid collaboration and highlight the significant changes that have occurred over the past 5 or 6 years in the Western energy landscape. And we talked about much of that earlier today. Assemblyman Holden gets it. He's very passionate about the subject, and he knows that it takes strong relationships, such as those with my next guests here, and that building that mutual trust among states is essential to capturing the benefits that the collaboration can bring. So we're honored to have his voice here included in the symposium and appreciate his participation and continued support. So without further ado, we're going to play his pre-recorded video.
Good afternoon. I'm California State Assembly Member Chris Holden, and I want to thank Elliot Manzer and the ISO Board of Governors and the WEIM governing body for the opportunity to speak before you all today. While I wish I was in person, this is the season of elections, and I am already busy with my staff preparing for next year's session. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the future of energy in California and the Western United States. As the former chair of the Assembly Committee on Utilities and Energy, I've had the privilege and responsibility of shaping California's energy grid in the near and long term. I've also seen firsthand the challenges that arise when striving for ambitious clean energy goals while dealing with the headwinds of increasing climate challenges. And let me be clear, the energy challenges are ever evolving for California and the country as a whole. Events such as heat waves, wildfires, and tropical storms are increasing across the West, threatening communities and critical infrastructure, including energy generation and transmission, which are essential to keeping the lights on. California's challenges are not that unique. Across the West, states are grappling with similar climate challenges while also setting their own goals to have more clean, renewable energy without losing the grid stability people have come to expect. And while some in California are skeptical, regionalization is really just a concept about collaboration and efficiency. And in many ways, California is already enjoying the fruits of that in a smaller capacity. Launched in 2014 and operated by the California ISO, the Western Energy Imbalance Market, or WEIM, demonstrates the power of regional collaboration. Participating entities are able to trade energy from outside their own areas of authority, where the WEIM, allowing them to access cheaper and cleaner energy sources than what might otherwise be available. Through these efforts, California has benefited greatly. To date, the WEIM has reduced greenhouse gas emissions by over 700,000 metric tons, while simultaneously generating over $2.3 billion in benefits to participants. And the WEIM has also provided critical energy trades across 10-state footprint to meet energy needs during times of unique stress. Simply put, regional collaboration is already providing effective in ensuring a reliable and cleaner grid for California and the West at reduced costs. And I'm pleased to see the development of the extended day-ahead market to further capture the benefits of enhanced coordination. But more is needed. The Western Electricity Coordinating Council found that each of its western subregions will be unable to meet reliability standards by 2025 on their current independent tracks. This is backed up by the CEC and the CPUC in the SB 100 Joint Agency Report and many other studies. This year, I authored ACR 188, a resolution which passed with unanimous bipartisan support in both the Assembly and Senate. It requests the ISO to summarize relevant analysis of the benefits of regionalization and help provide a strong foundation for why the state needs to focus on regional collaboration soon. By enabling the CAISO to become an RTO, we would bring all of these diverse entities together to form one organization to manage the Western energy grid. This would allow participants in the RTO to capture benefits from the seamless transmission of diverse energy, to more effective long-term transmission planning, to robust wholesale energy market across the footprint. Demand for an RTO is increasing around the West and will continue as long as the underlying factors of climate change and goals for decarbonization exist. For each state, it's about assessing their particular needs and beginning to collaborate on a shared model that expands on the principles and ethos of the WEIM, but with a scope that allows the power of the West to tackle the challenges of tomorrow. Other states are already moving in this direction. Colorado and Nevada have both already adopted legislation requiring that their utilities join regional transmission organizations by 2030. Even the Federal Department of Energy funded a study led by the Utah Office of Energy to explore the benefits of joining an RTO and to increase dialogue between states and interested entities. Simply put, a Western RTO will be formed sooner rather than later. I believe the proven benefits of regionalization and California's position as an energy leader in the West perfectly place us to lead the transformation of a Western RTO, creating a cleaner, more reliable energy future for the West. I'm so pleased to be joined by my colleagues from Colorado and Nevada on the stage today, and I only wish I could be there in person with them. Colorado Senator Chris Hansen has been a champion of the Western energy transition and coordination efforts for a long time, and has led valuable conversations over the past several years between Western stakeholders to try to solve the complex set of issues. Nevada Senator Chris Brooks shared my passion for this issue as well, and has unique and relevant experience to know what it takes to build the resources for a clean energy future. Together, as I mentioned earlier, they both drove their state legislation SB 72 in Colorado and SB 448 in Nevada that requires their utilities to join an RTO by 2030. Engaging with the rest of the region to ensure electric reliability and affordability for California households is critical to do now, and I look forward to working with these two senators and policymakers around the West to make this happen. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful time during the rest of the symposium.
All right, thank you. Join me in thanking Assemblyman Holden for that video. Now it is my pleasure to bring on Senator Chris Brooks and Senator Chris Hansen to the stage. I'm not trying to Well, thank you for being here. And I think Assemblyman Holden did a good job of introducing you two. He sort of took my job from me, but we appreciate you being here. And we named this panel In the Arena, From Policy to Practice for a reason. In the Arena was a quote from a speech that Teddy Roosevelt gave back in 1910, but it still holds true today. You are all, including Assemblyman Holden, you are actively engaged in these energy issues. And as legislators, you're using your passion and your interest to really make change in this area. So I can't think of a better title for this panel because you two are so deeply engaged in these issues. So my first question is to both of you that you do have this passion for energy and you have experience from early on. Senator Brooks, you started a renewable energy company. I think that's where I first met you in Nevada, and then have used that expertise all the way through your career. And Senator Hansen, you worked in the international energy economic space, and so you've been in that from very early. So I wanted to get a sense from you how you really got to where you are now, and really what really made you lean into these energy issues as you were going through your career. I'll start with you.
I thought I was here to talk about Nevada election results, but we can talk about energy. That's cool.
We can start there.
It really started, my first job in this world was as an apprentice lineman and building electrical distribution systems, and then just went on to, be a utility contractor building distribution systems, and then started a renewable energy company about 25 years ago doing development, and then one thing led to another, and I ended up at a utility that was part of the CAISO in Nevada, a co-op, and they're wonderful CEOs here today. I just saw them, and that really introduced me to the opportunities that I saw for the state of Nevada to be involved in something more organized and something broader and more regional. And that led me to that, and quite a few other things, led me to get involved in the Nevada legislature, where I ran for office in 2016, really to help my state that I love so much to capitalize on the opportunities that were available in renewable energy generation and in regional markets. And that one thing led to another. I met the amazing Assemblyman Holden, I met Senator Hansen, and the three Chris's got together and we talked about some of the opportunities that existed. And my experience of being the executive vice president of a CAISO utility, where my job was to work with CAISO, it really kind of pushed me into some of the policy decisions that I made as a legislator.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I think it speaks volumes to the work that you did with Senate Bill 448, which we'll get to in a minute. But I also wanted to ask you, Senator Hansen, just your experience and how you got to where you are. And keep that passion alive.
As you can tell, I think from the three Chris's, this is kind of the joke of at the legislature in Colorado is you always want to carry bills, don't marry them. And my joke with this subject and this bill was that we moved in together and got a dog. So we got very serious very fast. So there's a lot of passion here with this topic for the three of us, I think. And I think for me, I finished up grad school, was focused on electricity system planning in my graduate work, and really then took a job with IHS and was an electricity system analyst for several years and did dispatch modeling and looking at basis differentials around the U.S. and around the world. And I had what I kind of refer to as my burn the ships moment in 2016, about the same time Chris Brooks did, and left my job and started knocking doors. And celebrating American democracy today, that was nothing says American democracy like going and talking to 10,000 of your best friends in the neighborhoods that you live in to ask to get to represent them. And for me, I think I came to this topic, of course, with the professional and academic background, but also I left my job to work on climate change and came to the conclusion that after we had put in place in Colorado the clean energy goals that we set for the state to decarbonize the electricity system, the best leverage point to decarbonize was to work on the transmission grid. And I know a lot of us in this room feel passionate about that. And frankly, it was a topic most of my colleagues knew nothing about. So it's like, here's a place that I can really contribute. And that led to Senate Bill 72.
Yeah, I think both of your experiences in your professional lives led to such success in the Senate and the Assembly that you both were in. And it led to you taking action, right? Like you said, both Senate Bill 72 and SB 448 were really a piece of that puzzle that you saw needed to happen, right? For your state to meet its energy goals in its own way and own time. So with regards to the legislation that you passed and maybe other things that you're thinking about, what do you think those critical success factors are for you to see the elements of that bill, of those bills, really come to life in a way that supports your state's ultimate goals? And Senator Hansen, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. It's actually, as you asked the question, it reminded me of, raise your hand if you did high school debate. Do we have any high school debaters in the room? Oh, a few. It reminded me of this term we always use, inherent barrier, which I think about in our legislative work is like, what is it in the current system that is not allowing something to move forward? And on transmission in Colorado, there's lots of things that fit in that category, right? Incumbent operators, utilities, co-ops, munis, they all have a different position on grid issues, which is perfectly appropriate. Different financial incentives, different operational incentives. And so I think what really got us past, or the straw that broke the camel's back in Colorado was once we got some broad agreement from labor and the environmental community that this was the best path forward for the state. And we had a bipartisan set of votes in the Senate, got to a great vote count, and then all the operators were like, yep, time to start negotiating. And we got a lot of progress in that situation. And so I think really spending a lot of time in the summer before talking to those stakeholders and explaining, why this made a lot of sense for the state, why it made a lot of sense for those particular groups. IBEW in Colorado's case in particular, the big environmental groups that are heavily engaged in this work, and being able to chart a path to a great bill draft that set us up for success once we got back into the chamber. And I think, like most important pieces of legislation, you pass them the summer before. Lots of action, in the building, but ultimately, if you can show up with a lot of the work ready to go, you can be in a good spot when the session rolls around.
So tell me how it's going now, right? The bill passed, was it about a year? No.
April of 21.
Yeah, April 21. And I know
we were racing, actually. We were texting back and forth. When's yours going to get signed by the governor? We were trying to see who could be first.
How far apart were you? Not too far?
Not too far.
I think Nevada beat us by a week.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. We were on the phone with each other at night at the end of a busy session day. Like, where's you at? Where you at? Yeah. What are you hearing?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious how you feel it's going now. Do you think it was that sort of inherent barrier you were breaking down to get the state, the utility, folks to move? Do you feel like that is making a difference now in the work that's happening as a result of the bill? And I want to hear from Senator Hansen first, because then I want to hear your full story too of the.
Yeah, as you can tell probably by my approach today, I'm feeling very bullish about what's ahead. I'm super excited about this, and we went into the bill discussion not with here's the prescription or here's the recipe for the region, but with a deadline. And just like I'm raising 2 teenage boys right now, they need deadlines, or they will procrastinate. Our operators, our states, our commissions need deadlines to get this work done. And so that was really where the concept came forward. And there were tons of discussion. Where should that deadline be, right? There were plenty of folks who were like, it should be yesterday. There were plenty of folks who like, this should be never. Let's find something that's workable in between. And so we ended up with 2030, but with some extra incentives if folks could get there quicker, because the advantages are so large to move faster. And so we'll share in that upside with the operators. So there are scenarios where we could get there faster, and I certainly hope we do. But I really think having that deadline in place and then putting some other tools into the bill on permitting review and creating a transmission authority in the state, allowing the PUC to look at intra and interstate benefit, which was prohibited under previous law. So there was a bunch of other things that went with that deadline in the Colorado bill that I'm hoping will set us up for success.
Yeah, great. And I think similarly, SB 448, it wasn't solely about the move to a regional transmission organization. There was a number of other aspects to that bill. Tell us a little bit about getting that bill through and the motivations there, and then how you're seeing it sort of come into practice with your task force that you got.
Well, that bill was kind of textbook sausage making, legislative sausage making. I had enough in there for enough people to keep enough folks engaged that wouldn't back out, and it was a delicate balance. But it started, it started well before session. As a matter of fact, it was the cake was almost fully baked, 6 months before session, and that was as a result of working with, in a very similar fashion, working with IBEW and the overall labor community. And I'm an IBEW member to this day, and always have been my whole career, even when I was a contractor with 600 employees. But I worked with labor, worked with the environmental community, worked with the environmental justice advocacy community, worked with the Public Utilities Commission, worked with, and maybe most importantly, the IOU in the state and the transmission owners and operators and co-ops in the state, and tried to really get enough consensus built around that that no one party was so upset by what I was doing that they could derail the process. But there was enough good things in it for everyone, and that's a difficult process. But there were a lot of other things embedded in that piece of legislation. But it really, I couldn't stress enough how important it was to talk to work really closely with the utility that was the main transmission operator in our state, and with the staff of the Public Utilities Commission. I mean, we're telling them we're going to do this thing through statute that is going to hugely impact their work that they do on a daily basis. And at the end of the day, they're the cop on the beat that we're putting there to help us enforce this and make sure that it benefits the ratepayer. They needed to be part of that conversation. And then I had some really good resources. Rebecca Wagner, I see her here today, she helped me. And then there was a gentleman named Bob Johnston who had just retired from WRA, and I conned him into giving me 6 months of his life to work on this piece of legislation as we shepherded it through the process. And I was the chair of finance, so I am able to kind of exert my will a little bit more than maybe other legislators can. But all of that said, we're able to get a bipartisan, almost unanimous vote in both houses on a climate bill. And in Nevada, Nevada well, that's kind of interesting. So we just didn't sell it as a climate bill. We really found the common ground with all of my peers in the legislature. It's really about business development and consumer protection and ratepayer benefits. And that's the common ground that we found. And I think that's the model when we're talking about other states. When I look at some of the states to the east and north of Nevada, they do not share Nevada or California, for instance's climate goals or renewable energy goals. Everybody wants their constituents to save money, however, and everybody wants to keep the lights on. And so I think that was a good model for what we're doing here. But it put in a date that motivated the investor-owned utility in the state of Nevada to start conversations. And right after Senator Hansen's bill and my bill came out, and we coordinated on what the language would sound like, so that there was some continuity there in the conversation. That large utility working group formed, and they started having conversations in earnest. And I think that I'm seeing more momentum as somebody who's kind of been in this space for a decade now. I'm seeing more momentum now than I really ever have. And now, hopefully, that's good momentum. Not all momentum is good, as we saw last night. But we are really starting to see something happen. So
yeah, and
I would say success.
You're referring to the Western Markets Exploratory Group.
Thank you.
People have different ways to say the acronym, so I'll just say it without the acronym. But I think you're both seeing that, right? I think both utilities, Xcel Energy and NV Energy, were sort of drivers behind that exploratory group, which I think is probably what you wanted to see.
Silent W.
Yeah, it was Meg. You're right. So, Senator Brooks, in that bill, you created the Regional Transmission Coordination Task Force. And I've been honored to speak in front of that task force to provide some background information on our activities. What are you seeing come from that conversation? I know some of it was just foundation setting, which is important, right? Your task force is made up of a wide variety of stakeholders. And so a lot of it was just sort of table setting, right? Mm-hmm. And to some degree. Are you seeing some nuggets out of that conversation that are going to be helpful?
I am. So I created in that bill, I did a lot of things, but what it did is it created that task force. And you'd be happy to know I killed another task force and a study to sacrifice them so I could create that one. I don't believe in task forces, studies, commissions, committees. I hate that in legislation. So if I create a task force, I have to kill another one. So I was able to kill another one. But what it really is doing is it's enlisting advocates outside of our world into the fight that will be ahead to have Nevada go to the next level. And so, believe it or not everybody in the world is this odd subset of energy nerd that is transmission energy nerds, like the folks in this room and on this stage. But So we need to enlist regular people who speak English and into our world, and so that they can see the benefit and they can see how this can benefit their community, their industry, and so that is really a lot of what's going on. Not only the educational piece of it, enlisting those communities and those representatives of those communities in the task force as advocates in what's necessary next. And that's a much broader conversation that's going to be, for a lot of folks, really uncomfortable.
Right.
Stacey, do you mind if I pick up on that
Please
point really
do.
quick? Because the other thing important about Senate Bill 72 is it was bipartisan. I had a Senate sponsor that joined me from the Western Slope, Senator Don Coram from Montrose, very conservative member of the Senate. And I went and talked with him well ahead of a session about joining me on the bill. And I think that the ability to get a wide set of bipartisan interest in the bill and support for the bill, and I kind of described it to him as, hey, this is the railroad of the 21st century. If in 1880, if your town wasn't on the railroad, you were going to get passed by. And he saw it the same way for the West Slope and for the Eastern Plains of Colorado. If you don't have access to transmission, you can't take advantage of the billions of dollars that is going to be invested in solar, wind, storage, et cetera. And he really saw it as a community economic development tool, I think rightly so, for the rural parts of Colorado. And so that really helped us to bring in lots of additional stakeholders.
Yeah, I think that goes to your point about the economic opportunities there, just as well as the reliability. Senator Hansen, I don't know if it was due to SB 72, I think it was happening even before that, but you started convening these really sort of engaging conversations with Western parties about trying to tackle what are the key barriers, right? And so over maybe the past three or 4 years specifically, you've been able to convene groups, and I learned right away that you have that ability to really try to tackle these tough issues with a group of stakeholders that are all really rolling up their sleeves and talking about this. In those conversations, what are you finding to be some of the key either barriers or opportunities that we can start to gel around and take action on?
Yeah, those are sort of, I guess for me, like kid in a candy store events. I feel like, I get to just reach out to the smartest people I can think of on this topic and others, and invite them to come spend 3 days with me in the mountains and squeeze in some skiing now and again while we're up there. So they're really fun events, and with the Colorado Energy and Water Institute, I think the thing that I've found fascinating over the 5 years we've been doing these types of events is you kind of put the ingredients in the bowl and stir, and that's what we're really trying to do when we get these meetings together. And for one example, we put SPP and CAISO in the same room, and okay, go. Who can get the most market share in the room? Who's going to be able to sign the most people up this week? And I think it was probably part of our theory of change, which is let's create this dynamic where there's a deadline, but we're not going to determine. The RTO is going to look like A, B, or C. And let the best ideas come forward. Let these competitive ideas fight it out for market share, and we're going to get the best result. And also thinking about, especially as we started drafting, kind of the California being a bit stuck. And could we create some outside pressure as part of our theory of change? And if enough states were doing this, and we're this idea of momentum, I think we've been able to get some momentum going, as is evidenced by some of the conversation today. Does that push California to a new spot? And we both talked to Assemblyman Holden about that idea. And so, that was explicitly part of the idea, is maybe shaking the snow globe is a better metaphor. Yeah. And to see if we could get that dynamic to move things along, because as most of the people in this room know, this is 25 years of failure, trail of tears over and over again. Of trying to do better, and we have to do better. The urgency is so pronounced.
And that gets back to this statement that Teddy Roosevelt made about you're in there, right? You're trying, and you might try and fail, but you actually tried. And so that means something, right? Rather than just sort of looking from the sidelines, sort of waiting for something to happen. So I think it's really important that the work that you both have done. And I wanted to touch on the sort of sticky point you raised with California, and it's the governance structure, which, as you know, is something that Assemblyman Holden is beginning to think about for next year, and others are as well. That sort of threat or the competition that SPP has created and that you have helped bring about in the West to say this is going to happen, sort of one way or the other. What are the key elements for you in terms of when we say governance? It means a lot of things to a lot of people, but in your mind, what would help get us through this sort of sticking point that we have?
Yeah.
Well, I heard it, I think it was from Scott from Pacificor earlier, and he said, everyone wants to go to heaven, nobody wants to die. Well, it all boils down to that. So the governance issue is really about cost allocation issue, and cost allocation issue, there's winners and losers. It's like rate making. It's like a cost of service study. There are winners and there are losers. Nobody is going to pay the exact right amount for access. And so, but there needs to be a voice in how that cost allocation is determined and the methodology that's used or the case-by-case basis. And that is the governance. That's where folks need to participate. And I look at that's the number one issue I'm concerned about. And so I look at Nevada. Nevada is 650 miles of shared border with California. 90% of every person that lives in Nevada lives less than 50 miles from California. There are more Californians living in Nevada than there are people born in Nevada. These are all facts. 25%, maybe 30% of the revenue of the state of Nevada comes from visitors from California. We like California, and we are electrically interconnected. When you see the map of the transmission corridors, that is my backyard that comes right into Southern California, the busiest transmission corridor in the United States of America. It's a natural fit. As a policymaker, I couldn't in good conscience recommend that Nevada be a full member of the California ISO in its current form. And so this is the disconnect, and this is why there's so much benefit for the people of California and the people of Nevada if there was a structure that worked for both states. And the same thing, me and Chris had a conversation in his office in Denver, 4 years ago. We were like, but if we all join together, then maybe a conversation could be had and the benefit could be expressed to California on what the rest of the West, how this could help us all together. But we're not going to do it unless we have, obviously a proportional say, not necessarily an equal say, but a say and a seat at the table.
Well, and this idea of sort of the credible other option, right? That with or without you. I mean, it'd be great to do it with you, but if not, we got 65 gigawatts. I mean, we'll figure this out. That's more than enough for a nice-sized RTO. Much rather do it with the 50 gigawatts in California, but let's figure it out, because the alternative is just burning money. I mean, why keep burning money and have high reserve margins and low reliability and all the things we're struggling with? It just doesn't make sense. And so I think that hey, the door's open. I think the West is saying, let's see if we can figure this out. And now it's time for California to act.
Yeah. What do you think the next steps look like? I mean, I know there's sort of something that action needs to happen in California, but how do you see it happening? I know your states have not only legislation, but also the interest. Do you see it happening sort of over time, incrementally, with, some states aren't ready, or I shouldn't say states, some utilities aren't ready to go there. What do you see as the sort of next steps? The best you can.
In my legislation, and I think the same with Chris's legislation, is we did not want to be prescriptive on the process by which you got there or what it absolutely had to look like. You just got to do it. You got to get there. You got to get, and so that was the primary motivation, because like I'm not smart enough, and I know the Nevada legislature is not smart enough to be able to be, it's not flexible enough to be prescriptive in what it should look like, because we don't know what it's going to look like. It's evolving. It looks way different than I thought it would 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I thought Nevada would just like, at the wave of a pen, we would be full CAISO members and everything would be wonderful. And then we'd start talking to Arizona and we'd start talking, and, it would grow and grow. That is not how it turned out. And it shouldn't have turned out that way. It's been a very organic and incremental process. And at the end of the day, we can't necessarily compel an IOU to do something with their billions of dollars of assets without it being beneficial to them, their shareholder, and the ratepayer. And so it's very much have to involve them in the conversation. And that's what I see happening. And I see it kind of moving forward in a very organic and incremental way. And I'm very pleased with how that's happening. And it's created models, and we SPP and WPP that are here and we're talking to. It's created these models that I think have helped inform California or the ISO on what it could possibly look like. And I think they've modified their thought process a little bit as well. And so I'm really happy about the direction it's moving. It just ain't going quick enough.
Yeah. And I would just quickly add that the EIMs and the EDAMs and the multiple versions of them. Again, that competitive pressure. These are the steps that are building connective tissue, that are building the foundation for the eventual RTO, or organized wholesale market. But I just stress these are not end states. We got to get the whole enchilada, because if you look at on the customer side, the customer benefit comes from full RTO, comes from full ISO. Pretty marginal customer benefit in the first steps, but we're making a move, and that in and of itself is a reversal of the last 25 years. So we should celebrate that and build on it.
And I think that not only the success of EIM and the formation of day ahead market models and the subsequent or the impending launching of a day ahead model, but the event. Cautionary tale, the events of summer of 2020, and a success story, the events of September 2022. And this is what happens when you don't play nice together, summer of 2020. And then what happens when you cooperate and coordinate, September of 2022. It showed what is possible on the absolute worst side of it from a governance standpoint and from an equity and fairness standpoint in the eyes of some Nevadans, and then what can happen when you coordinate as a region in a historic event, and the benefits that you bring to the ratepayers and the taxpayers and the citizens of all of our states. What's the cost of keeping the lights on the Las Vegas Strip? Priceless. And so you've got to think about those issues, and so I thought that really gave me a lot of hope. Like, hey, we can do this.
Yeah, my version is ski lifts.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep those running.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we're running close to the end of time. I wanted to just ask sort of a final question. What do you see? Do you see any changes or additional legislation or policy in your states to help continue to move this forward? Senator Hansen.
Well, since Brooks is out the door, can't run bills anymore. I do appreciate the question, because I have been working on some ideas for the next legislative session in Colorado, and I should say I've up until yesterday I sort of had two versions of each of my bills, depending on the outcome of the elections, and my team had a pretty good night last night in Colorado, and so I guess that means I'll run the more assertive version of what I was going to run. One thing I wanted to pick up from the last panel, though, was this idea of maximizing the value of existing corridors. I think this is a place where Colorado can do more. Reconductoring, optimization, that both got mentioned in the last panel. And I'm trying to look at how we might be able to speed up permitting and speed up the process Right now, current law, current regulation in Colorado is if you reconductor, you've got to permit like it was a new project. Well, that seems kind of silly. How about we provide a clear statutory path for accelerated permitting and move those projects faster if you're just replacing the line, for example. That seems like a no-brainer to me. That'd be the pitch I'll be making to my colleagues. I'm sure the local control advocates will fight me on that. But the fate of the planet rests in our hands, so I might be able to win that one. But that's one of the ideas that I'll be looking at for next year of how to make sure that the PUC in Colorado is evaluating reconductoring and line optimization, max out the corridors, so to speak, and then also see if we can have faster permitting. I think that'd be a good step for us to take to build on the previous legislation.
Great. And I know you have you'll have influence, certainly.
Well,
in your
I
state.
won't be a legislator in the next legislative session, but I will certainly be involved in advocating on behalf of this issue, because it's the fate of our planet rests in our hands. And that's not hyperbole. That's not hyperbole. That is real. And I feel the economic benefits that the tens of billions of dollars of potential economic benefits for the state of Nevada are dependent on this issue, and new construction or new transmission capacity and working in a regional way with our neighbors. I don't necessarily have any policy recommendations to facilitate that right now. I think that my primary goal was to put in place a statutory framework that the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada could have the statutory ability to approve any suggestions that were made moving forward by the state or by the utility. And so I think it needs to cook a little bit longer before we mess with it in Nevada. And I have no real recommendations from a policy standpoint. Sometimes the best thing legislators can do is nothing at all.
Amen to that. Well,
Who's clapping? Who's clapping?
Smutney. Well, I, for one, am glad I'm in the arena with you. You two have been fabulous to work with, and really we are so blessed to have legislators like you that are engaging on these issues, very complicated issues, with such grace and success. So thank you so much for being here and providing some of your thoughts to us today.
Thank you for
inviting us. So please join me in thanking the two senators.